Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, where we break mental health stigmas through conversations. I'm your host, Nat, and we dive into topics about trauma and how it impacts the nervous system. Yet we don't just leave you there. We share insights and tools of self-care, meditation, and growth that help you be curious about your own biology. Your presence matters. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. Help our community grow. Let's get into this. Oh, and please remember to be kind to yourself. Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast. I'm your host, Nat. And as I mentioned in the previous podcast, is that recently, as many of you know, Natalie has transitioned to the other side of love. And these are my first podcasts since this new reality that I'm in right now. And I am graciously going to be spending this time with Rabbi Alon right now. So, Rabbi Alon, would you be gracious enough to introduce yourself to the listeners and let us know a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nat. My name is Alon Ferenci. I was born not far from you in Rochester, New York. Grew up south of Boston in Massachusetts. Now live in East Tennessee, Knoxville. I was ordained as a rabbi in 2010, came here to work at a pulpit, and about 2 years ago left the pulpit to focus on counseling, coaching artists, and consulting to arts organizations. I'm married with 4 boys, which, the standard response is wow, or oi, or oh my. And it's often delightful chaos and mess, and sometimes too much. I like to write. I'm learning to play drums. I'm a modestly good soccer player, or I should say, as we've aged, I have not aged as poorly on the soccer field as my teammates. So I look better in comparison. I still play Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that's a good précis of my life. I like to laugh. That would be and dance.
Yeah. And as you, before we started the podcast, you asked me how to address me, if it's Natalie or Nat. And I said, if you're playful, you'll call me by Nat. Yeah, we'll see how
We'll go
how
back
much
and forth. We'll
laughter.
go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, how much play we'll get into the dialogue. Before we start, would you be willing to join me in a 2-minute mindful moment?
Absolutely.
And for
Absolutely.
the listeners, as you always hear me go on, safety first. Most of you listen to a podcast while driving or needing your visual. So when I ask the rabbi and myself to close our eyes, please do not. Yet the other prompts you're able to follow through with us. So, Rabbi, I'll ask you to get comfortable in your seating. And if it's safe to do so, I'm going to ask you to gently close your eyes. And you're going to begin breathing in and out through your nose. And you're going to bring your awareness to watching your breath go in and out through your nose. You're not going to try and control your breath. You're just going to be aware of the rhythm of it, allowing it to guide you into your body. There may be some sensations or feelings coming up, and that's okay. You're safe to feel. You're safe to let go. Surrender the need to control. Release the need to resist and just be. Be with your breath. Drop deeper into your body. Now there may be some thoughts or memories that have popped up in your mind, and that's okay. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath, creating space between the awareness and the thoughts, and dropping deeper into your body, allowing yourself to just be. Again, more thoughts may have popped up. Bring your awareness back to your breath, beginning again, creating even more space between the thoughts and the awareness, and dropping even deeper into the body, allowing yourself to just be in your breath. Now, at your own time and at your own pace, you're going to gently open your eyes while staying with your breath. How's your heart doing?
That was very pleasant. I'm usually the one leading a meditation. It's been a while since I've been led, and it's nice to have it on. I'm wearing headphones right now, and so I can. It really feels intimate. And the sound texture was really positive, so it went right through. I may be a little slow and sluggish as a result, but I will try to answer your questions appropriately. That's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to ground ourselves and to open our hearts. And slow and sluggish is the rhythm I like to be in so that we can be honest. And, once the emotions start, then it picks up the pace and there's some more texture and delight and everything else. I'm curious to know what had you commit into being a rabbi?
It's interesting because I've been asked this so many times. It's one of those things that's almost hard to explain because it feels so obvious to me. From a young age, I was watching rabbis and thinking that's what I wanted to be. That combination of gentleness, tenderness, wisdom, care. They were caring for me at difficult points in my life and other Jewish educators and Jewish professionals. I did well in Jewish settings. I was comfortable. I was more open and knowledgeable in those settings. And so it was a trajectory that seemed likely. I tried a few other things first. I worked in the music business. I worked in international relations. And those are still things that are integrated in my life in other ways now. But going deeper into my people's practices and my own spiritual practice, in a way, it wasn't so self-evident that that would happen, but I'm certainly grateful for that time to kind of explore things deeply. I tend to be someone who tries a lot of things, not necessarily in a shallow way, but not in a very profound way. Like I know how to play things on guitar, but I'm not a great guitarist. I know how to drum and how to act, but I'm not expert at anything. And so I guess it has been nice to have a deep reservoir of knowledge and perhaps wisdom about my own faith practice and to be able to share that from a place of, if not expertise, then awareness. So.
Mhm. What made you step away from the pulpit?
A lot of things. The short version is burnout. That was very common and shared among helping professions in the days of COVID. I think even before that, I don't like the word bored because bored tends to be a symptom of something else that's happening. I think people use bored too easily. I think I was growing apart from the practice of my community. I think I needed to go on a different spiritual journey, and I thought they could come with me. And in the end, they couldn't. I think I got a little tired of the mechanics of running a congregation and a nonprofit and the demands that puts on in terms of budget and mission creep. I never stopped loving most of the people. That's the hardest. And I always had a beautiful office and a nice experience and a great week. I missed that structure, but I think I needed to go on a different journey. And I needed to be with people who were more inherently willing to create. And there's a certain amount of, in congregational life, most churches, synagogues, and I imagine mosques, and also in nonprofits, of sustaining rather than continual reinvention, which is what I wanted. And artists are much more open to trying wacky things like writing a Western, So that's been appealing to me. And it's a return to certain roots of mine in the arts.
Would you say that the pulpit was stunting some of your curiosity and creativity?
I would say that if no one from my pulpit were listening. Yes. a little wary of saying that, depending on who's listening, but yes, certainly.
I
Certainly.
think sometimes structure only creates certain parameters, and curiosity needs to go beyond that. And it really needs to go into the unknown and uncertainty,
Yeah.
yet structure needs to have things that are certain, which then there becomes a bit of a conflict. And as you said, innovation. A lot of people say they want change, yet they're not really knowing what that looks like and to be in the action of creativity and taking chances and risks.
And
And
change involves loss. That was
yeah,
pointed out to me.
yeah,
Yes, for
a
sure.
lot. And it's messy. There's mistakes.
And I think my kids, there was a moment I realized, I think it was a Thanksgiving, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I looked at my kids and I realized they don't think I'm an ambitious person. And not like materially ambitious, but I'm willing to or wanting to try new and dangerous things and challenge myself. And that disappointed me to think my kids, because I had held a place of stability for them for their entire lives. I worked at one job, partly because that was not a model I had growing up that I thought my children would want, and partly because I loved the job. I don't want to deny that at all. But I did want my kids to see me taking adventures, and doing something daring. That wasn't the main reason, but I remember having that thought, looking at one of my children, thinking, or maybe even saying out loud, "You don't think I'm ambitious, do you?" And I was like, "Daddy's done incredible, crazy things in his life, just not during your life, because I wanted to create stability for you, but I don't want you to not know that about me, that sense of adventure and curiosity and creativity." I'm a weirdly curious person.
As am I. I've always, Natalie used to say I was into some weird things, but then when she went through her journey, she's like, now I understand it. I totally understand it. I still think it's kind of weird, some of the stuff that you want to engage in, yet I do appreciate it. I want to ask, now that, you said you left the pulpit and some of the structure, how has your parenting, has it changed in these 2 years?
Boy, I haven't thought about it. I mean, I'm definitely happier as a person and need less Prozac. Um, I am more physically present, and I don't know if that's always a good thing. Like, I'm the one who does a lot more of the driving and a lot more of the doctor's appointments and a lot more of the bill paying, just by virtue of working from home and having a more flexible job as my wife went back to her engineering profession.
Mhm.
Has that made me a better parent or a different parent? I don't know. The circumstances have changed, and I certainly, like, around my kids whining and bickering much more than I would like to be. But I'm also there for them. I think just by virtue of being there for them physically, it means I'm there for them in another way.
Mhm.
You know, I'm almost always the one to pick them up from school. And although my wife is a much better cook, I probably make more of the dinners now. I mean, she makes incredible meals and I make pancakes and hot dogs, but I think there's still an awareness, like, Dad's doing these things for us,
Yeah.
right, and setting the boundaries and being there. Um, but there's no way of replacing a mom. Like, there's no moms have a special role that she has, and she's never going to lose. So I don't know if I've changed, except the circumstances have changed. So inevitably something has changed in the dynamic, but I can't quite name it yet, but I will think about it.
Have you learned anything new about yourself in the 2 years?
Yes. Yes. And my wife, early on, as I stepped out to have my own practice, she said, "Well, what if it doesn't work?" And I think I knew then, and I'm certain now, whether it works in terms of finance and capacity, I've learned a lot. Right? My theology, my belief, my sense of the world has changed dramatically. Yeah. I mean, I think even if I were to stop today, I would say that. I'm just like, I'm kind of emotional about it in a weird way, that I feel like the two greatest years of growth in my life were the Peace Corps. Going to Central Africa and seeing people live radically different to how I had grown up, and realizing what's common among humankind and what's different, and what their sufferings are and what their joys are different to ours, was a time of explosive growth. And I would say this is the next most time of explosive growth in my adulthood. Absolutely. Trying not just changing what I think and believe and feel, but also even learning new skills like budgets and marketing, and and digital skills like conversing with people on podcasts or through a Zoom call when I'm counseling them. Yeah, it's been a period of explosive growth. So much so that I someone pointed out to me, and they're probably right. I could never go back to a pulpit, at least as it was, which is kind of sad. It's hard to leave a job you're good at. And candidly, I was probably pretty good at it,
Hmm.
but it was time.
Yeah, for new growth.
Yeah.
Yet, I think, a dialogue that parents may not recognize is that sometimes we use our careers and work to avoid the whiny parts and the arguments of children because it dysregulates our nervous system. Yet, if we can lean into that and recognize, oh, they're revealing things within ourselves that we haven't really integrated, we haven't really processed within ourselves, that we see some of our own beliefs and what it should look like. And when I first learned meditation, they told me, you have to create a quiet space in your house and go for 20 minutes. And I was like, I'm a solo parent to twin boys that are 4. That's not working. Like, no. Well, they were 5. Sorry, they were 5 at the time. So I brought meditation to the couch while they were listening to TV and banging their trucks and fighting amongst each other. And I got to see how the nervous system wants to control and stop and thinks it knows the story, where I allowed my curiosity to let the story unfold without me interfering into it, which is a lot of work when your nervous system is activated and all the energy is coming up. Yet, when you can allow your curiosity to be untethered, there's such more profound and depth to seeing things in a much wider lens than just very narrow.
I found myself doing that over the Thanksgiving week, being able to sit with my younger children and my nieces who are of the same age and let them run around all over each other and around me and just to enjoy that moment. I don't think I could do it for very long, but I remember an evening when I was really there. And I do think something you hinted at, I think a lot of people becoming workaholics is about avoiding crises at home or in the personal life. And then parenthood. I mean, I think, other explosive growth experiences are parenthood. I think it demands things of you and selflessness and compromise and flexibility and giving that are very hard. And I thought the pulpit did that too. I always would joke that it's not normal for someone to love 300 people, but part of the practice of the pulpit is expanding what you can love and who you can love and how many people you can love. And that
Mhm.
was good. But boy, parenthood, oof, it's hard.
I define it as the highest spiritual practice you can learn about yourself, because
It's
your
up there.
parents mirror things to you that if you're willing to lean in, then you can discover things, or you can just project blame and it's their problem, it's not mine. Yet, if you're willing to lean in and look at that mirror, there's such beauty. Yet, it's recognizing the defense and coping mechanisms that you've created in your younger childhood, that, to release and surrender those defense mechanisms takes a lot of warrior work. Yet it's not something a snap of like a miracle and it's all gone. It's like this is a nervous system that's been developed. So if you can lean in and have grace and radical compassion with yourself, that's the beauty of it. It's not about having perfection. Like I think sometimes the narrative of gentle parenting, it's going again where there's not supposed to be pain. There's not supposed to be, we're going to break our connections. It's about how are you going to repair them? Like we're not even able to stay connected with ourselves all the time. So sometimes people feel like as parents, I should be connected with my child all the time. And it's like, it's not possible.
A few hours a week is plenty. Yeah. A few hours a week is plenty.
Yeah. So it's about the repair and the honesty.
Yeah. I think also something you hinted at that I wish someone had taught me as a kid is if someone doesn't like you, it has a lot to do with them. It says a lot about them. And likewise, the things that vex you about your children, like that's a lot about you.
Yeah.
The child is much more innocent of that problem than you think. You're seeing something in yourself or some unresolved problem you had in your own family of origin. Yeah. I wish I knew as a socially awkward kid what I was triggering in other people and not that it was me and needed to be ashamed of that. But the reactions we have of other people say a lot about ourselves.
Exactly. And our children, I'm going through it with one of the teachers. of my twin boys, and they're just disruptors. Like they came onto this planet and they're like, I'm disrupting everything. I am not comment, like it's not quo status. I am going to challenge every little rule. I'm going to challenge every kind of conformity. I'm going to be playful. So now I'm like, and seeing their version to what the teacher wants. And it's like, okay, well, where do we find a middle ground in this?
Right.
And I'm like, and just educating them like, listen, like you're antagonizing someone. Like I'm not getting any messages from any other teachers, but this one you've recognized, like you can, push, not, they don't push buttons, but you're getting this person to push their buttons, and you're dysregulating them. So take some responsibility of not doing that. Just because you see something in someone doesn't mean that you are to activate that in the person. um Yet I'm
How old are
learning.
they now?
They're going to be 15 in February.
My
And the
oldest
teen.
is coming up on 14. Yeah. It's an interesting
Oh,
time.
I have my oldest is going to be 30 in May. But twins are a different ball game.
My sister has twin girls. Yeah. It's having them staggered was a lot easier, I think.
Yeah,
Because they were never going through the same thing at the same time.
and fighting
There's
for their own identity.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and I see in my mind where, oh, well, the adult must be the one that knows it all. And it's like, no, a lot of times children aren't listened to, and adults can take things too seriously and just want it to be so rigid and structured that they're not even able to loosen up on things. So it's being able to listen to them and not just come down with the hammer and, oh, no, no, rule and authority. And it's like, and my biggest thing that I work through in life is not to feel like I'm an inconvenience, where it's like, okay, now that the twins are disrupting, I feel the part that feels like an inconvenience, where it's like, it's okay. Let's feel that and let's go beyond what is presented here. What are the emotions that are trying to surface that you didn't know how to engage with and not just project right away?
What does it mean to feel like an inconvenience? How does that play out with a teacher or a coworker or
Um,
self?
it's their emotional temperature that they feel that I can see that their emotions are getting frustrated,
Okay.
and that it drains out the energy, that energy can go towards something else. Life is
Okay.
already challenging as it is, and so, and being a teacher is like trench work. And so you're trying to contain all these different little personalities, and then it's like, well, can you just do your part not to heavy the load? So that's what that feels like.
I think there's a lot of guilt and shame around being a parent too. Like whenever we get an email from the school, so and so didn't wear their uniform today, or so and so said something mean to your child, or vice versa. It's like, another email. I feel terrible. But also, there was something you said that made me think of a quote, and I'm going to misquote it, and it might be Einstein, it might be Julia Cameron, that children are not just young adults; adults are atrophied children.
Yeah.
Right? That energy and curiosity and drive and disruptiveness. I like that idea. It's so powerful. And then the question with children is, how do you help them regulate it so that it's appropriate, right? Without crushing spirit. And there's also this question as a person of faith of how do you tell them stories about faith that they don't need to unlearn as adults?
Oh, listen, I'm going to the whole thing of Santa Claus. I'm going to show you how mine have been disruptors. Okay. So I think five going on six. And one of them told me when he sees you when you're sleeping and when you're awake, that's not true. Like there's not one man that's watching everybody. That's just your parents like being able to see that and wanting you to behave so you can get the presents. So that's just a riddle that they're trying to tell the people. So then he's like the advocate. I'm going to go to the school and tell all of the children that Santa doesn't exist. Like, this is just your parents. Well, that was disrupting a lot of the students and his peers. And so then the teacher had to tell him, like, I understand your belief and your belief is okay, yet you can't place it on other people because it's disrupting them. They're allowed to believe what they want to believe. So there he started to learn too, I can't be a truth teller. because I'm the one being punished for it and I'm not able to speak my truth because it's making other people upset and it's breaking the status quo. So then that started having him doubt authority, like you're telling me to like not say the truth and I'm getting punished for it, and how can I trust you? So I had to honor, support him in that, but also let him know, like, this is a big thing. Like, parents and all that, like, they believe in this. Yet you are correct in how you're seeing it. And then his brother would be, you know what? I believe in Santa. He's like, don't, you don't believe in no, you just want gifts. Stop with that stuff. And I was like watching this whole, he was like, no, no, I believe in Santa. He's like, you just want gifts and you know that. Um, so I presented it to them asking, okay, well, now that you don't see Santa and you understand that it's me providing, do you want me to spend money all in Christmas where there's a bunch of gifts? Or would you rather me space it out throughout the year so that we can do trips and everything else? And they chose the latter. Let's spend it. And so I gave them financial literacy. Yet the pushback that I got by many adults and even my own mother, like now she realizes now, but she was like, oh, you're just the worst parent to be doing this. You're breaking their childhood and crushing their dreams. And I was like, why do we have to create these lies? Like
I
life
think
is,
within a year, some other child would have said Santa Claus. It's always one kid who lets everyone know it's not real, and then everyone knows within about a year.
oh,
If it
well,
wasn't your kid, it would have been someone else in the class within 6 to 12 months. There is a certain age of plausibility where
but
you know,
here it's lasting longer and longer because there's
how
10
old
year
can a
olds.
kid be that a 10-year-old thinks Santa Claus is real?
There's some 10 year olds, and that's the bubble that is created.
Well, they're going to be
Because
very
critical
susceptible to.
thinking,
They're going to be susceptible to some conspiracy theories later
yeah,
in life.
yeah, and that's where I'm like, 10, you're still, that's kind of hot. Like, but I'm like, I'm not, I'm like, where are you helping to empower the critical thinking of your child? Yet I always wondered, why do we have to create these stories that are illogical and based on lies when life is so magical already? There's things that we can create as traditions that are out of truth and faith.
Well, I would challenge some of this because
Okay.
I think this goes to things you can tell your kids that they don't need to unlearn. Right? I'm trying to express to my kids the difference between fact and truth. Right? And mythic structures have a very powerful organizing principle in our lives of the way we understand self and the way we understand our purpose and the way we understand the nature of mortality. And the example I always give is I'd rather watch Casablanca than a World War II documentary.
Mhm.
One is fact, but the other is truth. And you can have unfact and untruth. Those are the same, but truth is different than fact. And I think Santa Claus is a different thing because it's not even a faith proposition. It's just that's a fairy tale,
Mhm.
legitimately just not intended to be a faith proposition. It's based, or maybe it's based on some pagan ritual, as
Mhm.
Easter is. But the idea of truth, narrative, and artistic truth matters a lot to me. That because as you've suggested, the world is full of wonder and beauty, there is something that is truthful, meaningful, and significant about this world that transcends the limits of fact. So the line I use, someone like Jacob or Abraham in the Bible or Solomon, I don't think they existed as flesh and blood creatures, and I think I'd meet them in heaven. Like I think I will experience that. Those are real experiences, just like Rick and Elsa are real experiences in Casablanca. Those people, Cafe American and Casablanca never existed, but it is a real experience.
Mhm.
So I try to explain that to my kids, but it's hard. Maybe some of them are at an age now where they could understand what I'm trying to share. But Santa Claus is, yeah, I don't think even Santa Claus counts as that kind of truth. Santa Claus is just creative imagination that
Yeah.
disempowers financial literacy and tells kids that their parents aren't responsible for the gifts in a
Yeah.
way that's very destructive. Like, mommy worked hard for your PlayStation. I had to take an extra shift for this Xbox. I'm not telling you some man in a sled did it.
Um, And I
You should
just,
know that I made sacrifices.
and I think, these are things that I think we can change within our societal structures. And as you say, truth, there's truth also, I think, differs in everybody because of their lived experience. And so how they're going to come to truth might be in a different depth than other people because of that lived experience. Like facts are facts, yet even in the interpretation of facts.
Right.
And I think I think the absolute truth is we know there's a life force. We know that the body can only sustain for so long. We know the sun comes up, the moon. Yet, to, people getting to that absolute truth, I think it's people want answers, but sometimes we just have to sit in the question and let that exploration be there. That is the answer, is the exploration of it, the experiencing of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and feel safe in that.
And the paradox. Yeah. Yeah. Someone after a teaching at a Lutheran church said to me, and this is a funny experience. He says, "You know what I like about Jews?" And I was like, "Oh, this isn't going to be good." And he says, "Y'all have a very high tolerance for paradox." And I was like, "You nailed it. It's 100% who we are." Like I think, and I love it about my faith system, and it is something that attracts people to it. Is this idea that the question is more important than the answer, right? And a good question leads to new questions.
Mhm.
I like that. Because I think, to quote my own mentor, as far as heaven and the afterlife goes, no one sent us back a letter. So we really don't know and can't know.
Yeah,
Right?
we don't. It's just having that exploration within. And I think, as you've mentioned, the world, makes it that every parent is so bad. The world will make you feel that you aren't able to trust within yourself, to trust the relationship that's going on internally. There's a lot of things that are filled that you should doubt yourself, not be able
Oh,
to
absolutely.
validate your
Absolutely.
experience. And
Yeah.
so then how can you have a proper relationship with God, Allah, universe, whatever name you call your higher divinity? Because you have to go within yourself. Like I know I was raised in the Catholic religion, and as I would be a disruptor, that's why I have two disruptors. I would challenge of why does the priest only get to touch the Bible and we can't touch the Bible? And why do I have to talk through the priest to get to God? Like don't I have a direct signal to talk to God? Like this isn't making sense for
That
me.
must have gone very well.
Oh yes, it got really well. And my mother used to be like, would you just stop? Um, Yet it was like I'm thankful like I had the critical thinking, yet I went through waves because you're asking some very profound questions that you don't challenge these things where it was like this doesn't make sense to me. That I would have to go through all these things. Like, so I'm thankful that I asked that, but not everybody has that ability. They just go with the status quo. This is what I've been told. This is what I'm going to follow, and that's all.
Well, I wonder, in terms of art and faith and life, there is a large amount of people, either by training or instinct, who want simple answers. Right. I find that in when I worked in the music business, there was a lot of music that was consumed that was very flat. Not, I talk about whole grain art and whole grain. It was easy to digest. Um, yeah, and I don't know if that's by training. I don't know if kids get pushed into here's the easy answer, or people there's just a natural human inclination to not want to push too hard at every question. But I think it's part of what leads to extremism now in political and religious systems is this one side or the other is offering a much simpler answer than God is complicated. Economic globalization is complicated. Political systems are complicated, and we do our best. There's no neat and clean answer. And when politicians or religious figures or teachers offer those neat and clean answers, they're usually wrong.
Yeah. I've been told that I'm a deep thinker. And now people are finally, saying, yeah, you're a deep thinker, but I appreciate it because now you're having me expand my thinking process and see things a little bit more profoundly. Whereas when I was younger, deep thinking was like we don't want to go that deep. Like, where are you going? Like, that's too much for us. Now it's, having the experience and the confidence within myself that it's okay to have deep thoughts. It's okay to have profound, deep questions that won't have an answer right away. It might take a lifetime to really get some of the answers that you're looking for because you need the life experience to see the profoundness that you get here, but there's even more depths to it. So it has to unfold and evolve.
So this is related, but may not seem to be. What are you reading right now?
I'm actually not reading anything right now.
Uh, I'm enjoying a series of novels. So that have a lot of deep questions at the heart that I can't quite name.
The reason why I'm not reading is because I'm writing my own book. So I don't want to be influenced on other people's and then possibly plagiarize or,
Are you
start
writing
put
fiction or nonfiction now?
no nonfiction, my own story of when I had the experience with the brain lesions and the profoundness with the nervous system and what I've learned internally to offer that space out. And it's basically like the simplicity of it is feeling our authentic emotions, where many of us don't even know how to interact with our authentic emotions. And, with this week, these past few months, I've had the language that I could identify helplessness and how we
Mm,
don't know how to feel and be with helplessness. And then this past month with the hospice and Natalie transitioning really put me into the depths of what that helplessness feels like and how to be with it and not push it away, not numb it, hold space and validate it, yet allow it a space that it no longer controls so that I could feel the fear, feel the activation of it. And I think in our society, we talk about emotional intelligence, yet we don't hold enough safe spaces for people to feel their emotions and articulate it.
almost like we don't give enough time either, right? We're constantly scrolling, constantly moving, sitting still. And I think then people become afraid to sit still because they will feel the things, the grief, the frustration, the rage, the fear. It's easier to write to-do lists and scroll than to
Mhm.
sit with things that could be scary. And then they start to be less scary. It sounds like both of us have a similar experience with meditation. And what I find is it has allowed me to do metacognition, which is the idea that thinking about your thoughts, right? Literally to say to yourself, I don't want to think, I'm not going to think about that now. I'll think about it later. Or that's not what I want to think about. And I want to work on this problem. Or to just observe one's thoughts as interesting. Right? So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's been great.
Yeah. And, I'm one that what I offer and I say to people, I've lived it. It's not just out of theory. So this week when my body has been, go get busy, go out here, go do this, it
Right.
was like, sit still, sit down. And it's like, no, no, let's just, and I could feel the impulsivity, I could feel the energy and some of the coping mechanisms I used before. And it was like, no, use the tools, sit down and just be. Let your body process out some of the memories and the somatic feelings and rest. You've been on high adrenaline, high alert. Like when you are 24/7 with somebody where you're having to watch their breath and look at their rhythm and call for medicine and interact with people and hold space for them and all this. It's like, there were certain nights this week that I would wake up and still look for her. Like I got
Of
startled out
course.
in your breath and then like, oh no, this is the reality. And then that download of no, you're in this reality. And it's like, okay, don't push it away and just breathe through it and allow that regulation. Yet I had to sit in it. And I'm one that, you know what? I'm actually a walking, I'm walking the talk that I'm offering to people. I'm only sharing what my lived experience is so that I can more in talking to somebody, I can deeply listen. I can listen to the things that aren't said.
Although I think I practice on my good days, I practice 40% of what I preach. So good for you. I feel like I can say so many things more than I can live. And it was often true when I would give sermons that the best sermons were the ones I needed to hear.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I'm ensuring that people, it sounds like a lot of stoicism, yet it's like, oh no, I'm letting vulnerability in. If I need to cry or if emotions come up, I'm letting them. If the anger and rage is coming up, I'm articulating it and giving it some expression, not just, oh, I have no emotions and everything's just joyful. It's like allowing space to have these emotions. And I think people have been saying I'm so strong. Yet I think that the strong that they're seeing is that I can feel my emotions and be transparent and still have a stability to function and hold space and show up, have the courage to lean into the pain, have the courage to lean into the uncertainty and the unknown, and have a deep acceptance of reality. I want to ask you this question because this is what has been challenging me a little bit. Do you find that at times people are using faith to get what they want out of life rather than using faith to develop the tools to show
Yes.
up with the life experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's belief, right? There's the other words. I want to go back to what you said, that I think we don't see this paradox, but vulnerability is strength. That feels very paradoxical, maybe verbally. Yeah. And I think another verbal issue is that faith is about trust in meaning and trust in architecture and trust that the world has value and significance. Belief is a proposition, right? Belief is much more about facts, and faith is about truth, to go back to that idea. And I see it. I'm on the ethics committee of our local hospital, and you see these very idiosyncratic faith systems, so to speak, or religious systems that don't align with, Southern Baptists or Roman Catholics or Shia Islam. They're mix and match. And then people use this as this sort of cage and defense to tell you, here's why I'm going to take my loved one off life support, because my faith tells me this, right? And that's just a hodgepodge of beliefs. Yeah, people are doing it all the time. People use faith and religion and belief as a cudgel, as a weapon against each other all the time. It's not what I want to see, but I know it happens. It is a problem. It's a huge problem. Because what you do is you create this wall that you can't surmount, right? If God tells me it's true, then you can't. Who are you to criticize that Santa Claus isn't real? Right? My faith, my belief is that Santa Claus is real,
Mhm.
or that there is cake in the sky for people who behave well, and you aren't one to criticize. There's no conversation to be had, and I think that's a real deadening of human discourse. And that's not what I mean. Also, in small measure, I don't know as much about Christian scripture, but certainly Jewish scripture, Hebrew scripture is full of contradictions and paradox. Right? You can't point to one. You could just as easily point to one place that tells you one political outcome as point to the other that tells you almost the opposite.
Mhm.
We're always distilling and selecting and curating. Yeah, it's people are lying to themselves just to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen that a lot. It's just been very profound of how people use prayer and what they're saying. And I'm like, are you using faith to try to protect yourself from the pain that might come rather than ask for the strength and courage to live in the experience? Like, do you really understand the faith of unknown and uncertainty and trusting that you're cared for in the divinity and that you're not in control of the bigger plan?
that's what faith is, right? Faith is an understanding of the powerlessness and the limits of our control. It's not this clear outline of how old the earth is, and exactly what Jesus or Moses asked of us. It's faith, definitionally, I think, and there's a Paul Tillich talks about this, is about a surrender to a knowing, right, and a willingness to live in a world of uncertainty and still find it joyful and meaningful. Yeah, for sure.
You just defined me, where people say that I don't understand how you could have had all these experiences and still see joy, still see the positive in aspects, and still hold, it's beauty in ashes. It's really not
A nice
denying
phrase.
that there's evilness and there's ugliness in the world, yet not allowing that to cloud that there is beauty and love and joy in the world. It's holding both
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah.
that it blends. I want to bring you into a reflective question because I'm
Okay.
mindful of time now. And this has been a delightful conversation. So thank
It
you.
has. Yes. Thanks, Nat.
Yes. I want to ask you to bring this awareness right now and to go back to your 18-year-old self. And you have 3 words to tell your 18-year-old self to carry you to the journey of now.
Can I
What would
tell him
those?
that he was much better looking than he realized and he should have enjoyed his body then?
Yes, of
that's,
course you
that's
could.
the big message. How did you think you were overweight? You were so cute. Uh, no, okay, sorry. So 3 words that I
Could
would
be the,
give.
hey, that could be the message.
Well, I think the broader message is you are loved and lovable, right? Maybe that life is short and yet you have time to do a lot of things. I mean, the best advice I got at that age was a boss who said, you can do anything in life, but you can't do everything. That all the anxieties I felt will eventually dissipate and I will learn to manage my anxiety differently. Be careful of things that can become compulsive. And I think what you said, enjoy the struggle. The struggle is extremely gratifying. You can't put it into single words, but I think I'm answering your question.
Yeah. And giving yourself the words needed to reaffirm the
Yeah.
choices and the direction and where you are, to be proud of who you are in the experience of just being you, not the accomplishments, not the things that have been gathered, just you in your existence.
I would say to myself, and I had this in a sort of psychedelic and visionary experience, that I think you are exactly this to myself, but to all of us, you are exactly as God intended you. None of this was a mistake.
It's very profound. When people can not just intellectualize it, but it drops down into their body to embody
Mm-hmm.
and really connect into that, it's like such a release of an imprisonment that they've been in, that they've othered themselves and not felt that love internally. And that is very deep. Now, I know many listeners now want to know, where can I find the rabbi? So could you let them know where they can find you and what things you have to offer?
Sure. Based on a newspaper article from 12 years ago, or now 14, Eclectic Cleric is my online handle, both at almost every one word at Eclectic Cleric on almost every social media. And then you can look at eclecticcleric.com, one word, eclecticcleric.com. Always welcome conversations. There's no commitment, there's no pressure, there's no financial requirement. I do coaching, I do consulting and counseling. Mostly I work with artists, but anyone who has a creative spirit is welcome to reach out, and together I think we can help figure out what your creativity means and where it's leading you. Thank you.
Now, out of this dialogue, is there something on your heart that you want to leave with the listeners?
Well, I always think it's important to laugh. So I hope people find laughter today and something to create.
I want to thank you for
Thank you.
honoring me with the most valuable gift you could give anybody, and that's your time.
Thank you
And
for your
so
time.
thank you for sharing that. And thank you for this beautiful conversation. It has been very rich, and I have gathered a lot from it. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Please remember to be kind to yourself.
And you.
Thank you.
Hey, you made it all the way here. I appreciate you and your time. If you found value in this conversation, please share it out. If there was somebody that popped into your mind, take action and share it out with them. It possibly may not be them that will benefit. It's that they know somebody that will benefit from listening to this conversation. So please take action and share out the podcast. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok under LiftOneSelf. And if you want to inquire about the work that I do and the services that I provide to people, come over on my website, come into a discovery call, LiftOneSelf.com. Until next time, please remember to be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.